Thank you. His words of my eagerness to come to this event were not exaggerated. I have upwards of 100 speaking opportunities on the calendar this last year or year to come, and I have not said this anywhere else. It's not one of those lines that the guy uses everywhere he goes. I've looked forward to this one the most, honestly, because I've just had this deep sense of unmet gratitude. I've had gratitude, but I haven't been able to express it to the caregiving community in general and to the Salem Alliance community in specific, and some very specific individuals even narrowed down from that. But thank you for coming out tonight. I'm really looking forward to this. And I must say that my wife is not able to be with me this evening. She travels with me about half the time as we've made our home in Wisconsin now. So we're kind of in a new journey together. But she sends her greetings as well. I have two audiences that I'm thinking of tonight. Obviously, those who, like me, are in some sort of recovery process, that you're... You know, I never wanted to speak at a rehab conference. I'm just telling you that because to need rehab, you had to be dehabbed, right? Some debilitating experience had to end in your life to get invited to this kind of moment. So I really wasn't jockeying for this, but here I am. And so one primary audience that I'm speaking to, obviously, are those like me who are in some form of recovery, which... I always thought recovery was such a cheerful word. I didn't know it could go on for years and be really painful, you know. But so we're in some sort of process of trying to regain a quality of life to some degree. And as has already been acknowledged, caregiving community as well. I have a need to speak to you tonight and some of my comments. So to the caregivers, I'm hoping that by my telling of my story, at least 3 results will occur in the lives of caregivers. That you'll be encouraged in the service you provide, you'll be empowered to continue to provide that service, and you'll experience this reminder that you're key in the recovery story of the people around you. So for those who are on the recovery side, I hope you'll be encouraged in your rehab efforts to keep showing up, empowered to fully participate in your recovery, and experience this reminder that you're not alone in this journey. So that's my goal for tonight. If I reach those, only you will know in the end. But I've been invited to tell the story as I begin tonight. Now I realize that in a room like this, some of you are very familiar with the story. This is like, well, yeah, read the book, but I want to begin by telling the story because it gives me opportunity not only to get us all on the same page, but to say some things that are important on my heart to share tonight. So Joanne and I moved to Salem in 2002 and made our home in West Salem with great pleasure. The community here was very embracing to us. It was a fabulous place for us to have our 3 teenagers when we moved here all graduated from the local West Salem High School, and this just loved being parents and raising kids in this community was a rich thing. This was my daughter's college graduation photo, but I'm showing photos from 2008 because that's when this journey begins. My daughter got me involved in this crazy thing called long distance running. When I moved to Salem, I had no interest in running. I always made fun of the cross country teams when I was in college or whatever. I mean, really. Little shorts, colorful shoes, no ball involved. Why would you bother running without a ball, you know? So I had no interest in running, but Anna and I discovered Minto Brown. It's like, oh, what a fabulous place to spend a Saturday morning. So we started going to Minto every Saturday morning and run a couple miles, and 3, then 4. We were pushing each other, pushing each other. And we worked up to 6 miles, and I said, Anna, we're halfway to a half marathon. Would you be interested? And so it was kind of never thought about it, thought for both of us. But so we ran a local half marathon on a drippy January day. She won her division, having never competed before. The West Salem cross country coach was sitting in the timing booth saying, that girl's in my biology class and she just won her event. I got to recruit her for the team, so very reluctantly Anna became a high school and college athlete. But and an All-American, if I can brag on her for the moment. You know, it's really not fair. Have you noticed this? You can have the same workout as somebody else, and their trajectory, if they're 18, is like this, and your trajectory, if you're 45, is like this. It's like this. We're doing the same workout. But anyway, so I started, if you can't be fast, at least stay at it a long time. So I started doing these things called ultra marathons. These are the runs for guys too stupid to stop at 26 miles, and just keep going 50K, 60Ks. I never did the really crazy ones, although I would have loved to, but never got that far. So I had a genuine love for running and mountain climbing. You know, the goal of mountain climbing is not to get to the top of the mountain. You are aware of that, right? The goal of mountain climbing is to get to the bottom of the mountain safely at the end of the day. And this particular day on Mount Hood, we just about didn't do either. A local veterinarian and I. Fishing has always been a great love. Now, the lakes of northern Minnesota and Wisconsin are lifetime favorites. But this particular day on the Columbia River was a very pleasant day. You're familiar with these vacuums sucking up the salmon carcasses on the bottom of the river, the sturgeon. So I show you those photos not to do kind of a family Facebook page or something like that. I simply have to establish for those who we don't know each other that I was a healthy guy. Physically, had great genetics. My mother's 93, still lives on her own, just canned 30 quarts of applesauce and is raking her yard. So, you know, she's nothing to be contented with. I had great genes. I had good habits, especially if you include ice cream as one of the basic food groups, right? Good, yes. I'm glad to see that Bruce Dalkey is still paying attention. Good, okay. You only get about 10 minutes with Bruce, so I got So I had good genes, good habits, and good history. I had never spent a day in the hospital in my life other than birth. Would show up for every few years medical appointment just to have somebody sign off that I was still fine, but I had no reason to have any concern whatsoever. October 18th, 2008. I went for a leisurely jog with some friends through Minto Brown, did a 10-mile run that day, came back to the local downtown YMCA, lifted weights for a little bit. I didn't want to be one of those skinny runners, you know, so I lifted weights with my son, and noticed that day that I had a rash on my body. Blamed my wife, figured she must have changed the laundry detergent. She hadn't. Next day, it was Sunday, and I felt like I was getting the flu. And there's lots more to that story for the Salem Alliance crowd. That's not appropriate for me to share tonight. But it was Monday, my arms swelled up, both arms. I looked like Popeye, but they were worthless. I could hardly brush my teeth. Well, I thought I just had the flu. I'm a healthy guy. I'm not really sick. And if you hear moments of denial in my story, you're hearing accurately. That's just kind of the way I'm wired. And so I thought I was fine. But whatever was attacking me was attacking my muscular system and worked its way down to the legs. And in a week's time, I went from running 10 miles effortlessly to not being able to hardly walk up the stairs and having lost the ability to drive. You know that when you have to take your hands off the steering wheel to lift up your leg to get it to move from the gas over to the brake, this is a rather scary maneuver for the passengers in the vehicle. So I lost in a week's time, I lost my ability to drive. And at this point, began to pursue the medical route to see, well, what's going on. Again, whatever was hitting me hard and fast. Various other symptoms started to occur. And I landed in the Salem Hospital under the advice of one of my primary care doctor. Will just have to say it over and over tonight, grateful for the privilege of a health system like we have in Salem. I had never been to a hospital other than to visit people. now I'm on the receiving end, and I find that I'm in tender and gracious care. People who aren't just trying to figure out my physical situation, but seem to have some concern for me in the meantime. I'm talking CNAs all the way to, the top doctor working on my case. And so with great gratitude, I entered the Salem hospital, but I was slipping rapidly. And to fast forward the story a little bit, one of my last conscious memories was a local doctor standing with my blood chart in his hand saying, I've never seen somebody with sodium levels so low and still be alive. And I'm thinking, see, I'm a healthy guy. I'm going to whip this thing. Well, unknown to me, or barely conscious, I was shipped up to OHSU as the local system didn't. I respect a medical system that's willing to say we have taken this situation as far as we're able to do so, and not pretend that we're omniscient, we can do anything anybody else can do. They knew their limits and knew that at this time it was time to transfer me. So I respected that, even though I did not appreciate a research hospital as much as I appreciated a local hospital. Which, while I'm on that note, I did come up with a list of oxymorons for tonight. You know what an oxymoron is, right? Two words that don't really go together. Well, in my mind, these aren't just oxymorons; these are oxy-idiots. Like research hospital. You're not fooling me on that one a second time around. I found out who they're researching. They're researching me, and I've got a problem with being the guy in bed who hasn't seen his doctor in 3 days, yet there's a guy in a lab coat standing out in the hallway with 9 interns talking about my case for 10 minutes, and I got a little issue with that, so I just had to vent that for a moment. Speaking of oxymorons, the canned formula that I lived on, that is called medical food. Those are two words which should never be put together. Is it medicine or is it food? But don't try to combine them, all right? How about this one? Privacy curtain. Right. Just like those blue gowns they put you in with a drawstring in the back that leave a crack, if you know what I mean. Routine surgery. It's not a routine I care to start. Major surgery, isn't that redundant? Any day you place a knife into my body, I call that major. And one last oxymoron. Well, it's not really an oxymoron, but it's just two words that are fun for me. Staph infection. I knew it. There was something creepy about the whole staff, I know the words are spelled differently. I know, but it was too fun to pass up. So I get up to OHSU, and my last meal was a Ensure ice cream shake that a kind nurse gave to me, realizing I hadn't eaten for a while, and she gave me a shake, and then I went into a comatose state for 5 days. Completely unconscious. The word went out throughout Salem, Pastor Stumbo's dying, and 1,000 people gathered on an evening here in Salem, instantaneously, just by way of email and phone calls. 1,000 people gathered to pray for me and support me in that way. I didn't know any of it for weeks about that, but numerous times Joanna was rushed back into the room because I was not responding. My whole system was shutting down. Everything was just shutting down, and they didn't know why. They intubated me to support my breathing, did all those things to keep me alive. And then after 5 days, my eyes, I remember the moment fascinatingly clearly. My eyes slowly opened like the aperture of a camera. And I noticed she's from Minnesota, Montana, Tennessee. Oh boy, they've come from all over to see me. I must really be sick. And that was my first awareness that I indeed was dying and had just about died a few times, and I would continue a few more times in the weeks that came. Then came the 5 days of hallucinations. That was a trip. Those tap dancers on the wall, you would like those guys. They were pretty cool, but But the fish swimming in the curtains were rather concerning. They were blackfish about this big. If one of them bit you, it was no big deal, but if two of them bit you at the same time, you died. And I really didn't mind dying, but I didn't want to die by fish bite. Their weakness, however, was that if you squeezed them, they'd pop. And I wanted my son Drew to come visit me because 6'1", 200 pounds, he'd be a good fish popper, and I wanted him to come. Do you know the difference between an hallucination and a bad dream? A bad dream, you wake up and it's like, whew, that's a bad dream. God, that's over. A hallucination, you wake up and, honey, we got to do something about this. Do you know who those nurses are? Do you? They have been imported from an Eastern European nation as an effort to take over the United States of America by way of nurses that have human upper bodies and styrofoam lower bodies. Which I thought was a brilliant invention for us long-distance runners because you wouldn't have to nourish half your body. This is fabulous. I was jealous of all these ladies in their little blue pants running around so efficiently, but you know who they are? They're taking over America. We got to do something about these. I had like 15 of those that I remembered very clearly, after the fact. 5 days of hallucinations, and then just the long journey of being sick, being very aware that I was in extremely poor health. And I asked Joanna one day, why did they tie me down? She said, they haven't tied you down. I didn't realize that because of profound muscle weakness and excessive weight gain through my body not knowing how to process fluids, I went into the hospital 190 pounds, ballooned to 260 according to the hospital bed scale. And I asked Joanna, why did they tie me down? She said, they didn't tie you down. I didn't realize that because of the weakness and the weight, I was literally unable to raise my hand. I just thought I was tied, but I actually was just exceedingly weak. This is where I was when some of you were praying for me. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you. This was the season of, remember 2008 in Pacific Northwest? The ice storm that just like covered us, Between my slow recovery and the ice storm, I was just eager to get back to Salem. I just wanted to be back. I knew I had to be in the hospital, but they had ran over 100 tests on my body. 2 muscle biopsies, skin biopsies, lumbar spinal tap draw, blood draws by the dozens, scans and all those kind of things. They tested me for over 100 things. Hadn't been able to figure it out, and I was really okay with that. Diagnoses can be overrated anyway. We expect so much out of our medical community, and they give us what they can, but we can't expect them to be omniscient. So, but I was eager just to get back closer to home. It was Christmas. I like the care in Salem better, and I just wanted to be closer to everything that I was familiar with. I actually got to know nurses and doctors in Salem. And part of it wasn't OHSU's fault. It was an ice storm, and so they were like scrambling to keep staff, and some of the people had to stay there for 3-4 days at a time, and so it was. I didn't catch them at their best, but as Steve said, I was dismissed from the hospital with that wonderful statement, "You've stumped us all. We'll have to call it the Stumbo syndrome." And I get back to Salem, and I plead with my primary care doctor for a do not resuscitate. And the Salem doctor sternly, I'm the preacher guy. He gave me a sermon that I remember to this day. And he was trying to give me hope that you're on a mend. You're on a trajectory of recovery. I couldn't see it. But here in Salem, it was a wonderful day when 3 therapists gathered around me and said, today you're going to stand. And I stood. And more. They kept saying, higher. It's like, aren't I up there all the way yet? I hadn't stood in a couple months, and now I didn't realize I could look at that whiteboard, and so that was a gracious day when they helped me. I was starting to hear rumors of this fascinating place called rehab. Ignorance, I had driven down Center Street like 30,000 times and saw that building over there and some sign, but I was clueless what went on inside that building. But I started to hear of this place called Salem Regional Rehab Center, or whatever that 40-syllable word is that name is. And I started to dream of this place with tiny dumbbells where I could start to work out again and regain some strength, and a cafeteria where I could eat. I didn't know why they weren't feeding me, but I just figured if there's a cafeteria I could eat. And I pictured this place where I could go and get strong again. And so they released me to Salem Rehab. Never did get to eat. Smelled good, but there I met a team of people who were determined that I was going to go from there home and not go from there to a nursing facility. There was a team of people who had a fascinating ability to see in me what I couldn't see in myself. There was a team of people who had hope. I didn't have a whole lot of hope during some of this. I had a lot of questions, a lot of confusion. How did I end up here? But here was a fascinating team of people. And can I say a few words to caregivers? To caregivers among us. Either professionally, yes, but there are some of you who have never been paid a dime, and you've done all kinds of things for guys like me. Caregivers, what you are doing matters. It matters to the patient whose life has been upended by something frightening and painful. It matters to the patient's family whose life has been suspended as they support their struggling loved one. What you're doing matters for the good of our society, that the dignity of human life can be defended. It matters, according to my faith tradition, even to God himself. There's a special place in his heart for the broken, afflicted, poor, and lonely. Let me get more specific. I can't mention everyone, and I won't mention any names, but let me give a sampling. These are all Salem samplings. I think of the CNA. Her first month on the job, carefully following every protocol and procedure to a T. Evidence that she was brand new. Giving me my first shower with all the respect and kindness that one human could give to another. I think of the phlebotomist. I'd awaken at 5 o'clock in the morning at Salem Hospital. You know the flurry of phlebotomy that takes place early in the morning because the doctors want to have their charts when they show up, So you finally got to sleep about 4 o'clock in the morning, and at 5 o'clock they're showing up with a needle in their hand. And this phlebotomist came day after day, apologetic for awakening me, drew my blood with all the compassion a human heart could hold. Angels stood in awe. Vampires repented at the sight. My blood was being drawn by a saint. I think of the doctor wisely explaining to me that if I had a normal problem, like normal people, like a gallbladder or a heart attack, they could tell me what they would do, how I would respond, and how soon I'd be better. But since no one knew what I had, they really don't know what they were going to do or how long the recovery would be. And I was indebted to him for his honesty. Truth was being spoken. Even hard truth brings a measure of freedom. Thank you for not making it up. I think of the nurse who bathed me at night, body oozing with that bloating. Then I had all these secretions and all this gross stuff happening. Skin frail in some places, raw in others. This nurse tenderly humming a hymn in the middle of the night as she went from sore to sore, limb to limb, and in the process gave me far more than a thorough bathing, but a profound blessing. I think of the nurse who found excuses to spend extra time at my bedside so that we could have a real conversation about real life issues. She's here tonight, and I'm grateful for her. I think of the occupational therapist at rehab, meeting me morning after morning with her gentle greeting and patient range of motion exercises. If I had to get out of bed, which I dreaded to do, at least I was privileged to be in the company of kindness. I think of the physical therapist. You guys are a breed apart. For every ounce of kindness some caregivers have, you have a double portion of tenacity. Therapists, physical therapists, I'm not saying you don't know how to be kind, but I'm saying it's not your greatest concern. Getting guys like me healthy is your greatest concern. The word impossible has been deleted from your dictionary. The word can't is the worst four-letter word you can think of. Woe to the patient who declares that he can't do what you have determined he can. And I love you for it. There's at least 2 of them in the room tonight. Bless you. I think of the speech swallow therapists giving their very best to my recovery. About 5 of them passed me off from one to the next. None of them knew what to do with me. Trying every method known to science, but giving me that sympathetic look of, I wish I could do more. Bless you for your persistence. I think of the home health care nurse who's here tonight, who strategized ways to improve my care, advocated for me, and on more than one occasion had tears in her eyes as she's tended to me or left my home, but never let me off the hook a bit if she felt like there was something that I could do in my own recovery. Bless you for it. Bless you. Now I have a few other memories as well of caregivers. The physical therapist that ripped my PICC line out of my body with her knit sweater that she accidentally grabbed, and the Salem hospital nursing staff came by and said, well, you got the whole thing. I guess he's fine. Had to come out anyway. So. Or the doctor who came to my room for an entire week, always with the same greeting. He'd enter my room in the morning, you sleeping well? You eating well? This is not a very kind greeting for a guy who hasn't swallowed in weeks and is forbidden to attempt to do so. I'm thinking, dude, read your chart. or at least... or at least read that big sign on my door that says nothing by mouth, or whatever your code word is for that. I let it slide for the first week, but by the week 2, this patient's patience had passed, and I was, yeah, you get the idea. Seriously, I celebrate the lives that have been dedicated to care for those who cannot care for themselves, even the ones who should read their charts more thoroughly. Caregivers, bless you, bless you, bless you, bless you. Thank you. Well, 2 weeks in Salem Rehab, many stories I could tell about that. I wrote about them in the book, A Great Adventure, arguing with the physical therapist that I treated like a sister, and she treated me like a little brother, and I was the big brother, and this is this, but she's great. I was released to go home in the care of my wife. This is 2009, these photos now. I went into the hospital, I said 190 pounds, ballooned to 260 by hospital bed scale, however accurate that is. Came out at 140. Whatever attacked me, it attacked my entire muscular system from forehead to toe, and I was one weakened individual. But my heart was beating, my lungs were functioning, and I was really in the care of the world's greatest caregiver, who took her vows seriously. She had no idea what she meant when she said 27 years earlier, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, but I am grateful for her for standing by me. I started back into therapy on my own, under oversight, of course, but with a 1-pound dumbbell. It looked like a dog biscuit in my hand. But it was a workout, believe me. It was all that I could handle. You're going to hear in my story, if you haven't already, those of you who are in recovery yourself, please be humble enough to receive whatever opportunities are available to you. I was always the giving one. As a pastor, I kind of prided myself in being the one to give, but now I had to receive, and this was hard for me. And some of the guys in this room are showing up in my yard, doing my yard work, and I'm angry about that because I want to do my yard work, but bless you for doing what I was not able to do and had to learn to receive. Some of you in the recovery mode need to hear this message tonight. Receive the help that is being offered to you. Use the resources that are available to you. Don't be so stubborn to just, bury yourself in your own issue because you aren't willing to humble yourself and admit, I need help. Again, that's hard. But please also hear this. You have personal responsibility for your own recovery. You can't pass all responsibility off to the caregiving community. Those of us in recovery need to accept that I have responsibility for my own healing to a certain degree. I have to be a full participant in this. I can't blame and keep pressuring other people to do more than they're able to do. And so, starting back into recovery, into therapy on my own, I'm not on schedule at some, rehab center where they're watching me, making sure I do my stuff. Now I'm just on my own, and that's part of the journey of recovery. But the thing that surprised me was that I would be released from the hospital without the ability to eat. Now, I'm not saying they did anything wrong. I'm just saying I was ignorant. I didn't know people who lived on feeding tubes. It can be kind of a hidden segment of our society because we hide it under our shirt. And so you don't know, perhaps, that somebody has a feeding tube, and I hated it. I completely lost the ability to swallow. They have this fascinating procedure where they give you the syringe and 7 cans of those 2 words which should never be put together, medical food, that I lived on every day. And then you see next to me are paper towels. When I say I couldn't swallow, I mean I couldn't swallow, and your body continues to generate saliva. And so, what are you going to do if you can't swallow? How did Stumbo die? Oh, he drowned in his own saliva. That's happy. So you live spitting. And I spat, day and night, because your body continues to generate it at night. And so my wife would rip off 15 paper towels, put them on each side of my pillow, and that would be my quantity for my nighttime spitting. That was 2009, the entire year of 2009. Didn't eat a single bite of food, didn't drink a single drop of water, didn't swallow my own saliva. I lived exclusively, entirely on the feeding tube. 4 times went through Salem's good healthcare system. 4 times they ran tests to verify what I already knew to be true. My swallow was completely non-functioning. 2 of those tests at Salem Hospital, modified Barium Swallow, the most painless procedure you can ever be part of, as you drink this stuff that tastes like liquid toothpaste, and they have you a video x-ray going of this, and I watched that go in my mouth, slosh around a little bit, get down to the back of my throat, and sit on top of my esophagus. My esophagus looked like your belly button. Well, I've never seen your belly button, but it looked like my belly button anyway, and it just sat there, and then before it goes in the windpipe, have to spit it out. And twice ran that test. Twice went to a local ENT, and he gave me a guided tour of places I never wanted to see. He has a little hose that's got a camera on the end of it, a flexible hose that he's happy to run up your nose. When he was about ready to do it for the first time, I flinched a little bit, and he said, "Oh, I do this for 5-year-olds. You'll be fine." Which is doctor speak for man up, buddy. So he runs the hose up the nose, says, "Oh, you got a deviated septum, no big deal. Your soft palate's not closing all the way. You have a 3-millimeter separation. That's why you have a voice that sounds like red-green." That wasn't his exact quote, but the nasality of my voice comes back down to the bottom of the throat, and he groans. He had been very enthusiastic and optimistic to work on my case, thinking that maybe he could be of help. But when he got back there, he groaned and said, "Oh, you don't have cancer and you don't have trauma. Actually, that's bad news. I could fix those things. What you have is completely inoperable in both senses of the word. No operation that we can do to fix it, and it's completely non-functioning. 2009. I got discouraged. Speech swallow therapists, tried to help best they could, best according to the science and research that they had, but there's some things that there's limitations to what they can provide. And so there were wrestlings of faith, and there were issues of having to step down from my leadership at the church because I knew they couldn't wait for me indefinitely, and so had to relinquish my role there. And there were other soul wrestlings that I write about in the book that I won't take time to talk about tonight. But I am grateful for those of you who have donated plasma and blood through the years. Thank you. The one thing that the medical community discovered that was of great benefit to me was this treatment called IgG, or there's various names for it, but basically what it is a spin-off of plasma. And I fell in love with a dozen nurses and CNAs at the infusion clinic at Salem Hospital on the second floor in building whatever that is. And wow, what a team of people I had waiting for me there in the infusion clinic. Fantastic. And so I'd sit there for 7 hours, 7-hour slow drip, 2 or 3 days at a time, this slow drip IV treatment. And through that, and through the tenacity of another physical therapist in town, Northwest Rehab, that has an underwater treadmill, fascinating invention, with jets. I didn't know about session 3. I'm doing this underwater treadmill. That's enough work. Frontwards, sideways, backwards, sideways, frontwards again. This whole regimen that he runs me through, fantastic, fantastic. And then he says one day with a glimmer in his eye, let's turn on the jets today. Well, I didn't know I could run upstream or walk upstream as well. So there was, of course, the day when he wasn't there and his assistant was there and set the jets a little too high and blew my shorts off, but you don't need to. That's a visual you don't need right now. But it is kind of tough to walk backwards in water with jets shooting at you like 40 miles an hour while you're trying to hold on to your shorts. That's a fascinating therapy maneuver. That's multiple skills at use at one time. Grateful for the IV treatment, grateful for the ongoing therapy, grateful for the prayers that continue to arise, grateful for the lessons that I was learning in the meantime, growing in the conviction that sometimes healing doesn't come as soon as we hope because there's other things being worked on of greater significance, like the soul and the marriage and attitudes. 2010 came along, and through all that I just said, I was able to move from the wheelchair to the walker to the cane, and just as significantly, I moved from the passenger seat back to the driver's seat. An entire year of being in that passenger seat was killing me and my wife. I'm not just a backseat driver, I'm an every seat driver. She doesn't even like to drive, and she's got to haul me everywhere I go for an entire year. Who needs marriage counseling? Just drive together for a year in the wrong seats, you know. We're at the stoplight at the bottom of the Marion Bridge, of the bridge there, you know, coming back into town, heading toward the mall area. We're off to another doctor's appointment somewhere. We're at that stoplight. We're in our Dodge Green Caravan. I'm in the passenger seat where I've been for a whole year. Windows down, nice day in Salem. My wife's in the driver's seat. This guy in a big red pickup pulls up next to us at the stoplight. Kaboom, boom, 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 boom. Huge tires. He looks down on me from his truck, says, "Dude, you're in the wrong seat, man. Get over there where you belong." "You're killing me, you redneck." And I was like, oh. He had no idea how bad I wanted to be in that seat. Before I leave 2009, and get too far into 2010, I do want to show you a short clip video that was taken at Salem Alliance Church in 2009. I'm into recovery to a certain degree by this point. I'm wrestling with issues of faith. Warning, there's a little bit of God talk in this section, so just be warned. But it says some things that I wanted to say, but it also gives you a visual of what I was coming out of as I was moving from 2009 to 2010. Let's see if this will work. Yes, it does.
I want to make public notice of my appreciation for the Salem hospital staff. What great people. And also Salem Clinic, Salem Rehab Center, and Providence Home Health Care. We are a blessed people in Salem. We have such a strong medical community around us. Really, really good care locally. As I said in the video, I don't really like the journey I'm on. But I want you to know, God is in it, and God is good. God is in this journey, and God can only be good. He is to me forever praised. Some of you don't like the journey you're on either right now. You're in a tough spot. Economically, hard time. Physically, bad news. Relationally, tough situation. Emotionally, struggling. Please know that He, according to Psalm 139, according to Psalm 139, He is the God of the light and the darkness. Too much American theology is of the God of the light only. But the scripture is clear that He's the God of the day and the night, the light and the dark. The victory and the battle. The battle. Job didn't like his situation. Jeremiah didn't like his life circumstance. Jesus didn't like being in the garden. I don't like my situation, but God is in it, and God is good. If you understood any of that, congratulations.
They obviously didn't have the benefit of subtitles. I need to fast forward my story. I've taken a lot of time already tonight. So it comes to 2010. My wife and I decided to go on a road trip. We haven't been anywhere for a really long time. We've loved road trips in the past. Our son Josiah was graduating from a college in Minnesota in May, and we decided to take a road trip from Oregon to Minnesota by way of Tennessee and make a real trip out of it. Packed 9 cases of feeding tube formula into the back of the car because that's what I would need to live on for the trip. I'd still not swallowed a single thing. And on we went to thank people who had blessed us in this journey, prayed for us, got to Colorado Springs, thanked some people there, Denver, a church that had just poured out their heart to us, thanked a group there, got on to Hays, Kansas, nothing to report there. Where's Steve Pasinger's from Kansas. I just had to throw that in for him. There he is. and got on to St. Louis, Missouri, and I was checked into a hotel, and my wife bought me a McDonald's ice cream sundae. Now, why would you do that? Well, by this stage, I had worked it out with the speech swallow therapist that I was authorized to do what's called recreational eating. And this, to keep the brain from going completely crazy for lack of taste of food, and to keep the muscles from completely atrophying for lack of chewing. Once a day, I would do something very gross. I would chew. I would get it down to about here, and then quickly spit it out so it doesn't go into the lungs. The doctors really don't like it when you suck sundaes into your lungs, and so I would spit it out, and then dump it in the toilet and flush it. It's gross, it's crude, but it's what I was doing at this time. That Sunday, that night, get it down to here and just spit it before I choke on it. So next morning I woke up and was having breakfast, sitting at a desk in a hotel, pouring stuff down my tube. I'm in a roller chair. I'm reading the ancient Psalms as I'm having breakfast, and I run across the ancient Psalm that says, "The help of man is worthless." I found that kind of humorous. That I can only get so much help from others. We will act valiantly. There it is again. I've got my part to do, but victory comes from the Lord. The Psalm says. So I'm meditating on that. I look down, my feeding tube is stuck. It's like, oh, no big deal. With that little syringe you saw in an earlier photo, they also give you a plunger. And if your syringe is stuck, you just put the plunger in and you push a little bit, not too hard, not too fast, but it's kind of like power washing your gut as it shoots in there. And so we did that dozens and dozens of times, and no big deal. So I went to do it, and it wouldn't budge. And it's like, this is odd, but I'm weak. My muscles, I'm still 140 pounds. I haven't gained a single pound in the medical food. So I decided it's more medicine than food. And so I stand up, and I lean against a hotel wall to try to force this thing. I was like, couldn't get it to go. Sit back down, wait for my wife to come back in the room, say, honey, my tube's stuck. No big deal. She comes over to do what she's done many times before, and she can't get it. I'm like, okay. This is my sole source of hydration, medication, nutrition. Nothing goes in my body if it doesn't come in here. What am I going to do? Honey, push as hard as you can. We're half a nation away from our doctors. Honey, push as hard as you can. I'll never forget this moment. I'm in a roller chair. There's a sliding glass door behind me. I'm thinking, and my wife's muscles are quivering. She is pushing so hard. I'm thinking, oh boy, if this thing blows, it's going to blow me right out. Couldn't get it. It was stuck. Dump out the stuff, clean up the mess, tuck in the shirt, pack up the room, check out the hotel, get back the car, pray. But I'll confess to you at this point it was a really kind of prayer. Start heading down the road. I asked if I could, we had some yogurt in the back seat that was going to spoil, and so I decided I'd do a little recreational snacking as I drove, And I had a spit cup with us. I found out that in driving, that it was safer to drive with a cup than a rag. And so you did want to be careful when you rode with us in the car. Joanna's Diet Coke in one holder, my spit cup in the other holder. You don't want to get those mixed up. So heading down the road, I'm sucking on yogurt. And the verse comes back to mind, the psalm comes back to mind from the morning. The help of man is worthless. We will act valiantly. I wonder what my part is. Victory comes from the Lord. I felt firmly at that time that I should just try again, something I tried so many times before, but try not to spit. So I'm sucking on this yogurt. I'm working on it. After 30 miles, I turned to Joanna, who has been silently weeping, praying inside, but hadn't said a word, and just weeping and weeping. I show her that it's gone down one spoonful. So, I haven't spit yet. Now I got jowls. I got places you can hide, like a half gallon of stuff. But faith was starting to be rebuilt, and hope was entering into our hearts again. Prayers were becoming more fervent. Spiritual activities that we had participated in the past of praise and other things aren't really the setting to talk about, but we reinitiated some of those things, and I kept working on the yogurt. she reached over and touched me again, as she had many times before, right here on the throat, and said another prayer. And she had done that countless times. Even earlier in the day, she had done it, never sensed anything. This time, I felt the slightest twinge of life or something. And then I did what the doctors, medical community is like, no, not liquid. You don't do liquid because it goes straight into the lungs, you know. So I took a little sip of orange juice. And the night before, you know, the cold of that ice cream sat right here. And now I felt that orange juice go all the way down. And then this teeny weeny burp came all the way back up. Life was coming back to the system. And so we stopped at a Casey's gas station in Grayville, Illinois, and I took that spit cup that I had traveled with all those miles, and we said more prayers and took that spit cup, threw it away in a garbage can, and never had to use it again. Got back in the car. Joanna's driving now. I got work to do. I got more yogurt to eat. I'm working on that yogurt. I get to the bottom. There's plastic at the bottom of that thing. Friends, I haven't eaten since the Bush administration, and I'm seeing plastic at the bottom of this thing. We jump out of the car. We pull off at a rest stop, jump out of the car, hand our camera to the first guy walking by, ask him to take our picture. He's still wondering why they take a picture of this couple with cheesy smiles at a Yoplait red raspberry yogurt cup. Well, we were just so giddy with excitement, we didn't even tell them. We jumped back in the car, and next stop, Wendy's. Bought the biggest Frosty they'd sell me. It took me 4 hours to drink that Frosty, but I wasn't a marathon runner for nothing. We persevered through these things. Life was returning to the system, but those muscles hadn't been used. The dozens of nerves and muscles that have to work in perfect synchronization for your swallow to work, they hadn't been utilized in a year and a half, and this was a rude awakening for him. But I finished the night off with a bowl of chili. Go big or go home, right? Didn't you teach me that? You taught me that. Go big or go home. Not really. And sweetest of all to me, woke up the next morning without a single spit rag, spit towel, spit anything. I had slept all through the night for the first time in 18 months. I was so grateful, so grateful. Now, there's lots of elements of that story that I don't have time, or this isn't the place to share tonight. But I do want to close by coming back to some of you. I have had a significant turnaround, 40 pounds later. I'm the happiest eater among us. And, but I'm not running yet, you know. I'm biking now. I got my first overhand serve in 4 years. I fished for the first time, you know. But let me say a few things very quickly to those who are in whatever level of the earliest or mid or late range, whatever level of recovery. I can't share, I've taken too much time, and we're supposed to take some time for Q&A, but can I say just a few words to you? You have to be willing to look like a fool to fully enter into the recovery process. I have a hate-love relationship with swimming pools. I hate to get in them, and I love to get out of them. But my best therapy method right now, known to me, is to try to run in a pool. And I also have wrist issues, and so I make, you know, the water resistance is excellent, so I'm making little swirlies in the pool, you know. And you see the looks on these people's faces, you know, the bare-chested dude with his beer and his babe in the hot tub looking down at me in the pool making little swirlies, you know. And the kid, you know, that's trying to stay out of your way and saying, Daddy, who's the guy with 2 belly buttons over there? And making little, because that's what it looks like now, 2 belly buttons. But you got to be willing to look foolish to fully enter the recovery process. You have to be willing to persevere. Thou shalt not quit. You'll be tempted to quit. This is normal. Don't be surprised when the temptation comes. Recognize it for what it is and walk away from it. You didn't come this far in your journey to give up now. Press on. Please don't confuse your value with your accomplishments. You can't do what you once did. Does that make you less of a person? No. No. The greatest things about you aren't what you can do, it's who you are. But please keep doing what you can do. See, there's something within us that says, if I can't do it the way I used to do it, then I'm not going to do it at all. I'm never going to play tennis again. You know how foolish I felt doing a serve in tennis like this? Don't let the fact that you can't do what you once did keep you from doing what you can do. Enter in. You're going to grow old in body, but you don't need to in spirit. Do not walk this path alone. There's recovery groups, there's support groups that have already been mentioned tonight. Take advantage of the community that's available to you. Don't walk this alone. The final word that I want to give is, thou shalt find treasure in the dark. Find treasures in the dark. Healthy roots, listen to me, healthy roots grow in deep soil, and deep soil is only produced through pain. Find treasures in the dark. Some of the greatest treasure to be found is faith. I'm going to close with a poem that I wrote. This book came out yesterday at 1:15 in Wisconsin on a semi-truck that he wouldn't unload because I hadn't ordered the right equipment. So my wife and I had to unload 3,500 books at 1:15 by hand, roll and get them into our garage up this little hill. And I had a flight at 3, and I still had to get to the airport. And so I got one box here. They've already been sold, but there's 1,500 being shipped today to Salem. And so these will be available, but this is the second book. And I open it with this that I close with tonight. This is called A Poet's Train. Sometimes when I write, I have no idea where I'm going as I start. I get a little phrase in my head, and then I chase the phrase, and this is what ended up in August of 2008. If you're following the chronology, 2 months before I got sick, this is what I wrote. Once I boarded a poet's train, like choo-choo, Once I boarded a poet's train, but had to write my own refrain. He would not share his pen nor rhyme, and firmly swore that I find mine. We made our way a clicky-clack along the lonesome set of track. My mind was all a blicky-blink as I found it too hard to think. I hummed a tune, I said a prayer, I ran my fingers through my hair, I strolled, I paced, I got a drink, I took a nap just for a wink. When I had picked that poet's train, I got on board to pick his brain. But one must write from his own heart. There is no other place to start. I pulled the cord, the train did slow, I bid farewell, for now I know if I'm to write a song or tale, it must be found on my own trail. Once I boarded a poet's train, but had to write my own refrain. And now I'm glad he would not share, for my own heart was not found there. Sometimes we write, not for the crowd, we dare not even read aloud. We write that we might know ourselves, to learn the depths our spirit delves. To ride the heights our thoughts do soar, to understand what's in our core, to find the secrets here within, to feel that we're alive again. I'm grateful for that poet's train, but I won't come this way again. Got a Canadian somewhere out there. I'm grateful for that poet's train, but I won't come this way again. A lonely trail is my best choice, to hear my heart, to find my voice. I had a romanticized view of what that trail would look like in August of 2008. I'd have a backpack, a bottle of water, a lunch, some chocolate, a Bible, a journal, and I would go for a 3-5 mile hike through Silver Falls or somewhere. I'd find a log that had fallen years ago just for me to sit on this particular day, and I'd have found my lonely trail, and I would find my voice. Little did I know. Little did I know that my lonely trail would be a rehab unit. Sequestered in my own home. Friends showing up night after night to pray for me, tenderly care for me. Little did I know that the lonely trail was one completely different than of my expectation, but the trail you're on tonight, friend, is not a dead end. You don't walk it alone. Persevere. Keep walking. Thank you for your kindness.